Pans and Pioneers. Today I'm going to be showing you how I make a all-purpose pie crust. Now, this recipe is my grandmother's. She owned a diner, and this is her pie crust that she made on all her cakes, all of her pies in the diner. Some people like to use shortening in their pie crust. Some people like to use butter, and my grandmother liked to use both. So I'm going to show you the ratio she used to make a flaky pie crust for the diner. And she owned a diner and worked at a diner for years, and because my grandfather was a 18-wheeler driver, he was a truck driver, and he hauled lots of different products, but mainly trees for paper. So anyway, let's get started with the pie crust. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to have 6 tablespoons of butter, and you want them really ice cold and even maybe slightly frozen. She always cubed hers up and put it in the freezer for a few minutes, but I don't think the few minutes did much good. Maybe it did. I'm not sure, because I've made this before and I've not froze it and it turned out exactly the same. So then what you're going to need is a 3/4 of a cup of vegetable shortening, and I've just cubed that up as well. Okay, then we're going to add a 1/2 a teaspoon of salt. I'm using kosher. Now, she said a couple of pinches of salt, but this is what I've used in the past and it's worked. If you use regular salted butter, you probably wouldn't need to add that much salt, but for unsalted butter you do need to add some salt. So the next ingredient we're going to put together is it requires 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and I'm using the fine milled flour. Like on the bag that I buy, it says for pastries and pies. So hopefully you can find that. If you don't, if you just have regular AP flour, I'm sure it'll turn out fabulous. I use different flours for different things, and this one I use a pastry flour for that. So what she taught me to do was to pour in a cup of flour, and we're going to work this in. So we're going to work the flour into the butter and the shortening, and you can use a pastry cutter if you want. I'm going to use this giant fork I have. It's just easier for me, but if you have a pastry cutter, this is what you'd use it for. And we're just going to work the flour and the salt into this shortening and butter. I'm making one of her pies today, and I started getting out of my ingredients, and I thought, well, I'll show you the pie crust first. So, and your goal is to break down this shortening and butter to get it to look like cornmeal, just really fine. You don't want big chunks of butter or shortening in your pie crust. And as I'm breaking it down, I'm going to go ahead and add my 1/2. So get my 1/2 in there. And I'm just going to keep working because this is getting worked in. So that's the 2.5 cups of flour. This takes a lot of work to get this all the way. Food really is love, And you can't be in a hurry when you're making pie crust because it takes a while. That's why people buy them. she didn't use a fork. She used her hands. I could probably do some of that too. She used her hands to work her pie crust in. Probably go faster that way. But I think that's how she was able to tell when everything was mixed together, because it would, when you grabbed it, it would stick together. Just any large clumps, you want to get those worked in with the flour. Okay, I think we're there. Any of the larger clumps have already been mashed, and it's pretty much workable now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go wash my hands and come back, and we'll add some ice cold. Okay, so the next ingredient is going to be ice cold water. And I'm just going to use bottled water that's been in the refrigerator. This is a little slightly frozen. So we're going to do 6 to 8. So I'm going to just start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we'll see how that does. And what we're going to do is we're going to work in this water. I'm just pressing it into the bowl, trying to get all of the butter and shortening to work together. Somewhat like bread. Oh yeah, this is going to be a good one. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this and refrigerate it for about, I would say, 2 hours to get it nice and cold. Because you need to let your pie crust get cold enough to roll out. If you roll this warm, it's going to tear on you, and it's really going to be hard to work with. It's not impossible, it's just, it's better if you do refrigerated pie crust. That's why they're sold in the refrigerator section. Alright, so we're going to get this in the refrigerator, and we'll be back once we're ready to roll it out. Take our pie crust, it's been in the refrigerator for a little while now, and we're going to roll it out, and we're going to bake it off for our pie. This pie crust recipe is good for 3 days in the refrigerator or 3 months in the freezer. So if you put this in an airtight container, remove all the air out of a Ziploc bag, it'll stay in your freezer for 3 months. And this recipe, I made a mistake in the beginning. I told you it was for 1 pie crust. This is for 2 9-inch. And my mistake, I apologize for that, but this is for 2 9-inch pie crust. And I wouldn't say a deep dish, I'd say just, you know, just the regular pie crust. So I'm going to cut this in half because I'm going to get 2 out of it. And we're going to roll out, I'm going to go ahead and save the other pie crust for another time. But I wanted to show you the different layers in here, that what makes a good pie crust. This is going to be the flake, what they call the flake. My grandmother always called the flake layer. This is going to be a very flaky pie crust because you're able to see it in the middle of the pie. So we're going to wrap that up and save that for later. And then this one we're going to roll out. And I'm using a pizza cutting board. You can use the square one. For me, it's easier to do on this pizza. One, it's already round. And I'm going to work it a little bit. You don't want to overwork your pie crust because your pie will be tough. And we don't want that. Make sure that it's not really thick. Yeah, it's pretty good. So I'm going to try to piece some of this together. Take our pie plate and we're going to trim around it, and the pieces that we have left over, those we'll use to fill in. Let me get a knife here. I'm just going to reserve these pieces over here so that we'll have some to work it in our pie crust, okay? So now I'm going to take my just putting these little pieces in here. Alright, now we've preheated our oven to 400 degrees and we're going to bake this for 7 to 10 minutes. We're going to watch it and check it, and I'm going to take a fork and I'm going to prick the bottom so it doesn't shrink. But you could do pie weights or whatever you're used to using in your pie crust. Okay. All right. We're going to bake this for 7 to 10 minutes and we'll be back. Okay, so here are the pie crust finished. 2 9-inch pie crust. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you'll try my pie crust, and hopefully it works out. They turned out really nice, and we'll see you guys on the next video. And don't forget, find somebody to bless.